Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head to Malmö and we're going to do my first visit to a brewery that I've wanted to review something from for absolutely ages, but it's been notoriously difficult to actually get a hold of their beers. So for this one we're going to review my first beer from Nerd Brewing. This one, they like to call themselves open source beer, but this is the 2018 edition of their Index Out of Bounds, which is an Imperial, an oak-aged Imperial Vanilla Stout coming in at 12.5%, and this one is the Mole edition. So yeah, really interesting beer this one, and I've tried a couple of beers from Nerd Brewing before. I think the first time I tried them was at the Malmö Ale and Whiskey Festival in 2016, if I'm remembering correctly, and I also tried some of them at Brewskival when I was there a few weeks back, and I think I tried them at the first time round at Brewskival as well. But these guys have some really awesome Imperial Stouts, and interestingly they're also the highest, most highly rated Swedish brewery on Untappd these days. They've actually overtaken Omnipollo recently, which is very, very interesting. But a really, really good brewery. This one, very small scale, right enough, but one that you definitely need to try if you get the chance. So anyway, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Nerd Brewing. Very first time I'm reviewing one of their beers, of course. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, pardon me, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Nerd Brewing then. So Nerd Brewing are a gypsy brewery based in Malmö, and they were founded by Hannes Gruber and Karen Carlson back in 2015 when they had their premiere at the Malmö Ale and Whiskey Festival. So both are big beer enthusiasts. Hannes comes from a background in software development. He takes care of the brewing sides of the brewery, while Karen is an entrepreneur and a trader in the IT industry, and she managed the business side of the brewery, although she's not part of the company anymore apparently. But they started out with a very modest production, and they've now become, as I say, the most highly rated brewery in Sweden on Untappd. Most of their beers are actually brewed at Lilla Ölfabriken and some at South Plains Brewery as well, and more recently they've also been doing some beers at Chad Beer as well. So they brew at quite a few of the different breweries around Malmö, but they've been experimenting a bit more recently with IPAs and things like that. They previously focused a little bit more on Imperial Stouts, and as I said, I think they've got a very, very strong base recipe for Imperial Stouts. They found a really, really good recipe, and they're just kind of playing around with it and tinkering it a lot of the time. But other than some of the beer festivals around Sweden, it was notoriously difficult to get a hold of the Nerd Brewing beers. But as of 2018, they will start selling some of their beers in Systembolaget. I think the first date that they're going to sell them is the 5th of October, and it's actually the original version of this Index Out of Bounds that is going to be the first beer that they release through Systembolaget. I actually bought this one over at Kiosk in Copenhagen, and it was, I think it was around 80 Danish crowns or something like that, so around £10 or I'm not sure exactly how that would translate, maybe about $12 or something like that to Canadian, American and Australian, somewhere around that kind of region. But you know, it should be a really awesome Imperial Stout. You only get to do special reviews every so often on the channel, so I just thought, well, why not? And as I say, this is a brewery I've wanted to review for quite some time. But like I say, a very highly rated Swedish brewery, and it is cool to see that they're finally getting into Systembolaget, and hopefully that means their production goes up a little bit and more people can try this beer. So yeah, it should be a really, really interesting one. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Nerd Brewing just now. If you want to learn a little bit more, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook as well, and that'll keep you up to date with all the different things that they're doing. Their Rate Beer page has all the different beers listed there. They have been doing some IPAs and things like that recently, and if you're watching, I'm filming this review for you at the very in the kind of middle of September 2018. If you're watching it around this time, then you will be able to get some of the IPAs and the likes of Taproom and and Beer Ditch and things like that in Malmö. There are a few of the IPAs circulating around the city. But yeah, as I say, check out the links in the description below, but we'll get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself. So there you can see the label on this one. All the labels of the Nerd beers, incidentally, are really quite similar. But yeah, it's this one, it says Original Gravity 1.130, Final Gravity 1.036. The colour rating is 175, 85 IBUs, and it's 12.5% ABV. So yeah, the 2018 edition of Index Out of Bounds Oak-Aged Imperial Vanilla Stout Mole Edition. So it should be really nice. These beers, the Nerd Brewing beers, always have this nice wax seal on them. Unfortunately, when I was bringing it back from Copenhagen, I did lose 2 of the things from the wax bit, because normally there's 4, but I've still got 2 there to show you how kind of pretty it is. And on the side here, it doesn't tell you very much about the beer, other than it says it contains hops, yeast, vanilla. This one contains some chili apparently as well, some mulatto chili, so it's a chili Imperial Stout, this one. So we'll see how we get on with it. I was thinking if it's, I got this one because it's a vanilla. I have to admit, I'm not such a great fan of chili stouts normally, but we'll see how we get on with this one then. There we go. Snap it open, and there you can go. As you can see, nice smoky opening on this one as we open it up, and we'll get the beer out into the glass. And as you open this up, you really can smell the vanilla coming out of this one. Look at that, look how oily that beer is on the pour. But yeah, that looks absolutely lovely. Definitely going to have to get a hold. I'll put the computer off now, my brewery notes are finished. But yeah, as you can see, this beer has poured a nice dark ebony rosewood colour. I'm really looking forward to trying the original version of this Index Out of Bounds when it reaches Systembolaget. I'll need to make sure that I get a hold of one of those. But yeah, a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour. If I hold this beer up to the light, it's got a little bit of an almost chestnutty kind of Coca-Cola edge to it, but mainly it's a black ebony rosewood colour. You can see there's a solid half finger of a really dark frothy white head on this one, but 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and quite a few little ones just going up towards the bottom of that head there. But overall, you know, it does look really quite nice. So yeah, so pretty much as you would expect from an Imperial Stout. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one. Oh yeah, this smells like an absolute monster of a beer. It's really, really rich. Yeah, so with this one, the vanilla jumps out at you straight away, but there's so much chocolate in there, and obviously it's a dark chocolate. There's a little bit of roasty black malt in there, but that's quite minimal. This beer really leans towards the almost syrupy, sweet kind of thing. But yeah, the vanilla jumps out at you. It's got a lovely kind of woody note to it. That'll be the oaky notes, and I guess the oaky kind of aromas that you'll get out of this beer will be enhanced by the barrel aging. I don't know if I can detect a little bit of the chili or something like that in this one, but it's strange to say, but it almost smells as if it's got a little bit of heat on it. But definitely, there's definitely some brown sugars in there. Absolutely some brown sugars. It's a sort of rich kind of treacle note that's coming out of this one. There is a bit of the sweeter caramel, maybe a little touch of biscuit, but really the brown sugars, it's like a syrupy, oily kind of brown sugar note, I think, that's coming out of this one. It's almost got a kind of cakey element too. It almost smells a little bit like kladdkaka or something like that, the Swedish chocolate cake. But yeah, lovely vanilla notes to the beer. As I say, I think there's a kind of oaky note to this, and I think that's enhancing some of the vanilla notes in there. Lots of lovely chocolate. It's quite a dark, high cocoa chocolate that's coming out of this one. There's some red fruity esters as well. It reminds me of the little, I always say this, but it reminds me of the little heart-shaped sweets in the Haribo Star Mix. It's got that kind of fruity ester note to it. So yeah, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of this one. There's just a little bit of a smooth, earthy note to this beer as well, but it really leans towards the lovely kind of sweet side of things. It's a beautiful smelling beer. As I always say, just take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma. That's always half the experience when it comes to craft beer and whiskies and stuff like that. So yeah, take a little bit of time and enjoy that. But let's get stuck into this one then. So this one is the 2018 edition of the Index Out of Bounds Oak Aged Vanilla Imperial Stout, the Mole Edition, if I've put all that together correctly. 12.5% Imperial Stout from Nerd Brewing, the best rated brewery in Sweden at the moment. Let's get stuck into this one. Make sure you try the original version of this on October 5th when it comes out in Systembolaget. But let's get stuck in. Slanje, skål. Yeah, that's a really, really nice beer. The chili notes in it are quite, they're very subtle actually. I've tried a few chili beers before, and it's one that I was always reluctant about. I was never such a great fan of adding chilies into beers, but stout, the Imperial stouts, I've had a few chili IPAs and stuff, and I've just been like, you know, what is the point? What really is the point in this style of beer? The exception to that was the Death from Above from Garage in New Zealand. They did a really, the Garage Project, they did a really beautiful beer that was based on, it was based on I think some kind of Vietnamese curry or some kind of Thai curry, the Death from Above. It was a beautiful, beautiful beer. And this one, the Imperial Stout, this one's really nicely done as well. I think Brewdog have done a few chili stouts with the likes of the Dog A, the Dog B, the Dog C, but I've never actually tried one of those. But yeah, this one, it's really, really interesting. There's a lot of complexity to this beer. It's actually lighter in the mouthfeel than I remember. I'm not sure if it was one of these Index Out of Bounds that I tried when I was at Malmö Ale and Whiskey Festival, but I remember trying these beers and them being very, very thick and very oily in the mouthfeel. That might have been right enough because they were on keg rather than in the bottle right enough, because I've always found the bottle beers do tend to be a little bit thinner in their mouthfeel than some of the keg ones right enough. But this, it's a beautiful beer. I mean, it gets a straight thumbs up from me already, and this is from someone who is not a fan of chili stouts, so I think that should say something about how, you know, how good this beer is. If you get the chance to get this, they do still have some bottles of it in Kiosk in Copenhagen. Have a go at it. It really is very good. So yeah, let's focus on this a little bit more. So with this one, you can feel initially when it comes in, there's a little bit of that roasted black malt there, that just blankets the middle of your tongue. On top of that, the bitterness of that black malt, it's just kind of nullified a little bit by the high kind of cocoa chocolate that you've got with this beer. That high cocoa chocolate just pushes back the black malts a little bit, although they do start to push their way out a little bit more as you go further into the aftertaste. And I think the kind of chili notes, the mulatto chilies that are in this, are just pushing their way out a little bit more. You can feel that with this beer, and that's almost enhancing the bitterness. But I like the way that those flavours combine together, because I think if the chili was a little bit more prominent, I probably wouldn't enjoy this beer quite as much. But I do like how it's quite subtle, and it kind of comes out a little bit in the middle of the palate with that roasted black malt, which is cool. This beer, I would say, that chili note makes it lean a little bit more towards the roasty, kind of toasty side of things, which is pretty cool. On top of that though, as I say, you've got that lovely chocolate in there, and it's definitely a high cocoa chocolate. There's not really much of an element of milky chocolate in this beer, I would say. Normally you can get that impression when you've got vanilla and lactose and stuff like that added to the beer, but for me, this one's a dark, high cocoa chocolate flavour that's coming out. And that just sits on top of the roasted black malts that I was talking about, in the centre of the palate. I would say you get some of the brown sugars in there. It's a bit of a kind of treacly note, this one, but the brown sugars are nowhere near as prominent, I would say, as I was expecting from the aroma. And the aroma, it smelled like it was going to be really, the brown sugar notes would be really, really prominent. There's just a little bit of it. If you go right into the centre of your palate, there's a little bit of that treacly and kind of sweet caramel in there, but really it's the roasty, it's the black malts, it's some of the chocolate, and it's an element of that chili flavour that are kind of dominating the flavour in this one. It's a really interesting beer. This, it smells quite the aroma is quite different from how it tastes, if that makes sense. It's quite an interesting beer, this, really. Yeah, I would say the brown sugars come out a little bit more. After the initial taste, the brown sugars come out just a little bit into the taste, and it's quite a sweet caramel, this one. It's got a little touch of a brown sugary note as well, like I was saying. It's got a little bit of that sweeter caramel note. It's a really, really interesting one, this. If you get the chance to try this beer, have a go at it, because it is one that will test your palate in some ways, and I do like that. Normally when it comes to Imperial stouts, I like big coffee stouts, or I do like the big sweet milk stouts, and also the the chocolate stouts and things like that. Chili stouts isn't one that I've explored too much, but this one could convince me to explore it a little bit more and see how, and kind of see how we get on. So maybe that's something I need to have a look at in the future. But it's a lovely, lovely beer, this. As you go towards the front of the palate there, you can feel some of the woody flavours come out just towards the front of the tongue. And it's a kind of oaky sort of thing. It almost reminds me a little bit of some of the Innocent Gun. You can definitely get a little bit of that vanilla flavour there. The vanilla is interesting. It's almost like all of those flavours that I've described before are kind of infused slightly with the vanilla, which is really interesting. But towards the front of the tongue, you really get a little bit of the woody quality and a little bit of the vanilla in there too. But it's very, very nice. So yeah, just pay attention to the different flavours in this beer. It really is very well done. So like I say, a big thumbs up to Nerd Brewing on this one. On the hoppy side of things, it is pretty much as you'd expect. Back corners of the palate, there's a good little touch of earthy bitterness there. It smooths out as you kind of come further forward. There's a little touch of a floral character on the front of this one, and as you go round the very front curve of the palate, you get a little bit of the kind of grassy note. The hops actually, for a stout, this is quite interesting because it does have a little bit of that freshness in terms of the hoppiness in it, this one. Maybe I'm drinking this beer really quite young, because if it's 2018 edition, and it's if it's the 2018 edition, and it says on the side here it's best before January of 2013, you maybe could, or January 2023, my apologies, you probably would get a little bit more out of this one, and it maybe thicken up a little bit if you did age it. But I was just very excited to review a Nerd Brewing beer for you, so I just went for it straight away. So that probably is something to bear in mind with this one. I guess it might become a little bit sweeter and more caramelly as it gets a little bit older, as the if there's some secondary fermentation going on there in the bottle, it will change a little bit there. But as it is, it's really quite nice, and I do it's interesting to get a little bit of that hoppy freshness from an Imperial Stout. But as you go behind the front curve of the palate there, that's where you get that little oily bubble that gives you some of these nice juicy fruity flavours. And this one's quite interesting. I'm actually wondering if they've used Williamette or something in this. Because I know that some breweries like to use the likes of Williamette and Summit and things like that in their Imperial Stouts, but it's definitely interesting, this one, the way the hops come together. Behind the front curve of the palate, you get that oily bubble that I was talking about, and for me, it's got a little bit of a kind of candied fruit flavour. There is a little bit of an almost raisiny sharpness to it. Not sure if it's quite plums right enough. But it's got a little touch as you go further into the aftertaste. The sharpness kind of fades away a little bit, and I think you're getting more of a kind of candied red fruit, as I was saying, like the little heart-shaped sweets you get in the Haribo Star Mix. It's definitely an interesting beer, this one. It's got a lot of stuff going on. There's a little bit of warmth at the back of the throat there as well from the chilies in this one, but everything goes together really quite well. And I think that the chocolate and the black malts, and the chocolate, the chilies on one side, the chilies and the black malts on one side, and then the chocolate on the other, they really do a good job of balancing each other out, and you've got the lovely vanilla notes and the oaky woody character to this beer coming out. As you go into the aftertaste, the vanilla starts to push its way out a little bit more. Some of the chili warmth is kind of there, and some of the roasted black malts are coming out as well. 85 IBUs, I have to admit, I don't know if the rule is that when it comes to chilies and things you have to count their hotness a little bit as some of the IBUs, but I would not have guessed that this was an 85 IBU beer, I have to admit. But it's lovely, it's very, very smooth, it really is just a great beer. And as I say, this is from someone who is not a great fan of putting chilies in beers. They've done a great job of that, so have a go at it for yourself and just see what you think. A big thumbs up to Nerd Brewing on this one. In terms of the mouthfeel then, yeah, I'd say it's full-bodied, but it's on the lower end of full-bodied. Carbonation's very smooth. It is quite an oily one, this, and I think it would only get oilier, or more oily, the further that you age this beer. Malt base, as I say, very well balanced between the roasty side of things, and there's a good touch of sweetness in there. It's very, very well balanced. In the initial taste, it leans a little bit more towards the sweet side of things. As you go further on, I think it gets a little bit more roasted. There's a good little bit of bitterness from the hops, but I think if you age this beer a little bit more, that would kind of go out a little bit. There's a nice little bit of juicy fruitiness, and like I say, at the back of the throat you do get a little touch of the hotness from the mulatto chilies that they've got in here. But overall, it's a really, really interesting beer. Naird Brewing, you know, as I said, the highest rated brewery on Untappd these days, and you know, that's an accolade really to be respected. Untappd is a very good kind of it's not crowd surfing, what's the word I'm looking for? It really is a good kind of peer reviewing system. If Untappd says a beer is good, generally it is pretty good. So, you know, I really look forward to seeing these guys get into Systembolaget. You probably will see a review from me from these guys again in a couple of weeks when they release that beer. But it's been really cool to be able to review one for you just now, while they're still kind of an exclusive brewery, if you like. But yeah, a really interesting beer, this one. If you get the chance to try any of the Naird Brewing beers, you will enjoy them. You know, Hannes is a really good brewer by the sounds of it and by the taste of it as well. So if you get the chance to try some of these beers, I highly recommend that you do. But let's leave it at that for this one just now. So this one was the 2018 edition of the Index Out of Bounds Oak Aged Imperial Vanilla Stout, if I'm naming it correctly. The Mole edition 2018. From Naird Brewing in Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Been really cool to review one of their beers. Make sure you get a hold of the original Index Out of Bounds on the 5th of October when it's released in Systembolaget. But thank you once again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. Until the next time, Slanger just now, check out some of the Naird Brewing beers, and this one is pretty damn awesome. And that's from someone who's not a fan of Chilli Imperial Stouts. Skål.